Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to an absolutely unique event at any game fair, and that is the firing of an actual punt gun on a properly built punt with a real punt gunner. I'd like to give you some sort of insight into the sport of punt gunning, which is practiced still by a few enthusiasts. Unfortunately, the misinformed are inclined to call it the black art of sporting shooting, sporting wildfowling, but it's far from that. Nowadays, with so many restrictions on species which cannot be shot, this requires real knowledge and skill. Old punt gunning with the market gunners who literally shot everything they could to try and make a living is gone, and with prices now not what they were, and saleable species, so many are now protected, it makes the life of the modern day punt gunner quite constrained. The punt gunner nowadays is also constrained by good sporting practices, which is not really constrained to any of us, and a healthy respect for the quarry he seeks. Now you can see Andy in his punt, and this punt was built in the Coleraine area about 20 years ago. It is possibly the third of a series of outfits built by this one builder, and it's traditional wooden construction which is then sheathed in a fiberglass cover for durability. As you can see, it's very low in the water, very shallow draft, so you could get in hopefully close, but there's a lot of skill involved in that. You can see Andy is working the oars crossways, and in a rough sea it's a terrible way of getting bruised knuckles, and you'd want a very large box of elastoplast. The gun that's in use here today was made by Alan Owens in Essex. Now it's a 1.5-inch bore, which may sound something of a cannon, but this was a particular type of shooting practiced on our coastlines. 1.5-inch bore breech loader with a screwed breech design, and proofed on the 10th of October 1980. Now it was proofed for a load of 20 ounces of shot, or in pounds, a pound and a quarter of shot, and that was propelled by 3 3/4 ounces of coarse black powder. Now there's an enormous cartridge to hold that, and see Gary is holding it up, or Andy is holding it up at the moment. It looks, beside in his other hand he has a 12-bore shotgun cartridge we're all familiar with, and the 12-bore looks like something you'd use in a pop gun. Now Andy will load up the gun in due course, but the methods of propulsion are very interesting. The rowing was used for long distances when you were searching for fowl, and as I say, the skin knuckles were fairly frequent and painful. You could also use poling or punting when you were approaching fowl in shallow water. And you see Andy has a pole there he's using. And as you can see, he has to kneel up to use it, and it's a very, very difficult thing. You're on your knees, it's cold, wet conditions, not a nice sunny day like today. This would have been done in the depths of winter, and you can maneuver around with your pole in shallow water. Now finally there was another method, the method of using hand paddles, and this really took some strain, because you're lying down in the boat, you had no rowlocks, you put your arms over the side, and literally, having taken down some of the coping so that you could get at the water, and you can imagine this in the depths of winter. The boat is probably wet inside. You're lying there in the cold and the frost. Very early light. And what appeared to be almost about the size of 2 table tennis bats. You've got to try and manoeuvre this boat in closely, close enough to get a shot. Get the gun in line. You can't swing the gun. You've got to swing boat, punt and all. Now you see Andy is dressed in a grey smock type clothing. This was to hide him somewhere between the waterline and the horizon in the early light of dawn. And also his nice grey hat. Oh, sorry Andy, I forgot. You haven't the hat on today. Now, Andy is just manoeuvring the punt round with the gun, and if you all sort of dip down a little bit and look down the barrel, that's the view that a duck on the water gets of Andy and his punt gun. The idea was to get as close as you could within reason, manoeuvre yourself in the right position, and remember you have to deal with currents and tides and wind, and then load up your gun, which Andy will do shortly. And for safety reasons he's only going to load the gun now. And I will warn you, the sound is very loud. Now, do not be surprised if it's a lot louder than you expect it to be. Some people, unfortunately, have the misconception that punt gunning was some form of mad slaughter of species. It wasn't. You need to try it really to understand it, but it's physically demanding, propelling the punt at times against the wind and the tide over long periods. It's dangerous. It was done as a method of gathering food when things were few, particularly. And Andy is now manoeuvring his punt into a position where he can fire down the lake. He will load up his cartridges going in. He's going to screw on his breech. And this all had to be done while you're bobbing about in the waves and the wind. Another popular misconception is that firing at fowl on sitting on the water was common practice and will achieve large bags. It won't. You've got to get the fowl to rise off the water or step so that they're just in the air. Now this requires a real degree of skill on the part of the gunner. He's got to make allowance for the birds getting up so that they're at the right angle, in the right position, that he has the right amount of depression on the gun barrel, that he has it sighted correctly, and then hopefully he'll fire it at just the right moment and get something worth bringing home in the bag. Fowl always rise into the wind, so the gunner has to aim off to the upwind side, and the gun must be elevated by a prejudged amount. Now when he's ready to fire and he thinks he's got the birds in exactly the right position and it's all going to work, he hopes, the tricky bit comes. He's edging himself into position slowly, adjusting his aim, getting himself exactly where he wants. He's working against the tide, he's working against the current, he's working against the wind, even with such a low profile. Now if he shoots too soon, the shot will pass over the birds. If he shoots too late, it'll pass under the birds. So he's got that fraction of a second of opportunity. Now, to get the birds to rise, he would strike the side of the punt with a paddle or smack the water with a paddle, enough noise to get them to rise, and hopefully just at the right moment. I think he's almost in position. He's getting there. But you see, it's not easy. There's a lot of work. Your hands are wet. They're cold. Now remember, you would have 20 ounces of lead. He's getting ready. I think he's about ready to let go. Now, can you imagine the recoil off that? And of course he did get a few birds, we hope, and there's a few that he didn't quite get, which he needs the cripple stopper for, which were usually an older shotgun that would stand up to the sea, and he popped the ones that he hadn't quite got, and then the job is still not over. He's now got to go and collect the birds. Now, you have to check very, very carefully what birds you can shoot, and you only need one protected species in the middle of your flock, and that's your shot spoiled. The chances of getting a shot get slimmer and slimmer, and you really have to work very hard. A raft of fowl have to be checked with binoculars nowadays. You have to make sure you've not got a wrong one in there. Andy is getting himself ready again to get back to us. And believe it or not, that poor man is going to go through all that pain and labour again tomorrow for your entertainment. I think a round of applause for Andy.